Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. Happy July 5th. Hope everybody was able to celebrate the 4th. As my grandpa would say, you celebrate the 4th with a 5th, but then it's harder to go 4th on the 5th, and that's the case here today. I'm tired, Tommy. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor with you, Jad Chambers producing. You know, it's interesting when the 4th falls on a Tuesday like that. Well, you feel like you got to have July 4th celebrations, you know, the weekend before, right? So you get a Friday or Saturday night, and then maybe Sunday, and then on the 3rd, it's like that night before the 4th when nobody has to work, right? You gotta show America how much you love it. And then, of course, you get to the 4th, you do that, and now we all get to go back to work on a Wednesday. Welcome in, everybody. How are you, Tom?
I'm tired, just like you are. I had a moment yesterday where I realized how old I actually am getting. I played golf in the morning with the guys, had a good time, got home at like 1:30. We had a party to go to at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock. And I had a list of things to do and I got it done. And then I decided to lay down on the couch and close my eyes for a little bit. And my wife woke me up and said we had to get ready for the party. And I actually found myself saying, what if we just stayed home? How do you feel if we just don't go to the party for the 4th of July? Obviously that didn't fly.
Right.
Realize that I'm getting older now and I don't necessarily need to go to parties on the 4th of July.
I don't know that it's as much party on the 4th of July as that it is this year last in a sequence of likely parties that you rattled off, because it's just the timing of it on a Tuesday is very bizarre, very strange. Like it's almost like it extends into the weekend before.
Yep.
Last year, I think it was on a Monday. So that one's pretty obvious. Just a 3-day weekend, right? It just becomes but when you get into that Tuesday, it's like now you're talking about a 4-day weekend. And
right.
I mean, it's a lot. And the fireworks are going all the time. You're feeling festive, whether you're trying to find a pool or like whatever it is. If you're outside and it's hot, like it was last night, it drains on you. And yeah, getting old sucks. It does. You get a constant, got a daily reminder of that.
Then you wake up this morning and you got to try to get going. Like I'm back at the office and it's pouring down rain and it's cloudy and I just want to lay in bed. I don't want to get up. It's basically the perfect storm right now.
Our kids right now are still sleeping, I think, and that doesn't happen. It was good timing in that regard for them because, of course, they've been up. We're on a pretty normal. We're pretty good about like a bedtime routine. In the summertime, it's usually 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30. But the last few nights, for 4 days, it's been like 11:30, right? Because you got to stay up late enough to watch fireworks and then get home, and you've been in the pool all day. It's just, man. Welcome back. God bless America. That's for sure. Unless you're San Diego State, who's even more hungover because they don't know what they're going to do. Let's start there. We've been laughing about this for a while. And why I still can't for the life of me figured out why it's like if you preemptively break up with somebody and you send them a letter letting them know pretty soon you're going to break up with them. Like, how do you think that's going to go? And especially when you have to come crawling back to them. San Diego State has lost all leverage that could possibly be there for any possible scenario that they have. I mean, maybe this is the opportunity for like the American Athletic Conference to swoop in and try and take San Diego State, because I don't know what the Aztecs, who are as attractive as an up and coming athletic department as there is, could have screwed this up this badly. They don't have a home. They, after trying to break up with, preemptively break up, or at least let the Mountain West know that they were planning on breaking up with them, now saying, never mind, we actually don't want to do that anymore. Forget about that letter. You sent me a tweet yesterday, if you remember the Seinfeld, where George quits and like just goes off on his boss for a while and then decides how big a mistake that was and tries to pretend like it was all a joke. That's pretty much what San Diego State is today. They don't have a home right now, and the Mountain West is going to meet, and the Mountain West is going to decide, what to do with them. And I get it from the Mountain West standpoint, because if you're the Mountain West, yeah, you'd like to have them, but they're going to leave, obviously, at the first opportunity they get. So now everybody else gets to decide this fate. They're going to get together and they're going to say, okay, you can come back, but you have a $2 billion exit fee, is what they're going to do. Take it or leave it. And then what does the Mountain West do? They have no leverage here, Tommy. I mean, it's an opportunity for the Big 12, but the Big 12 is not going to take them singularly. So they're in no rush. I mean, maybe San Diego State, I suppose, could play as an independent. I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, I think that, from what I've been able to read, they will be able to play in the Mountain West this upcoming season, right? Like the notice was for 2024 and beyond. So there is a little bit of time, I think, for them to be able to figure out exactly what they're going to do. But you're right. I mean, this is an absolute mess. And I don't blame the Mountain West for saying, look, you told us that you were leaving. And so we are going to do what we need to do and protect our best interests in withholding the money that we would normally give you if you were a member of the conference. We're not willing to do that anymore. And so I don't blame the Mountain West. I do think that it is a little intriguing that the Mountain West is showing a position of strength in this. They're not a group of 5 conference, right? And San Diego State is probably the most premier member of that conference. And they could have easily, decided, look, we need San Diego State probably more than San Diego State needs us. So we'll let them come back. We'll just let bygones be bygones and, forget about all of this. They're not doing that. They're flexing a little bit on San Diego State, which I kind of like, because in a world where, conferences are, shifting and changing all the time, I think this shows in the landscape of college athletics that the Mountain West, even though they're a smaller conference, they're not going to just be pushed around, like we've seen other conferences do that sort of thing over the last couple of years.
Well, they have to, I get it too. It's not even like a hurt feelings, even though I'm quite certain there is some. Yeah. They're going to leave when they get the chance. Like if we welcome them back now, they're either going to go to the Pac-12 when that TV deal ever gets done, which has been now pushed maybe to the end of this month. They can have some idea of what, I mean, it's whatever. It's clinging to a life raft if you're the Pac-12. So whether you get that or you eventually, if things go poorly for the Pac-12, then become a part of this deal with the Big 12, one way or the other, they're out, man. Like they're gone. And so
right.
It's harder to let them back in when you know that, unless you try to hold them hostage in making sure they don't do that. And I don't think that's the right thing for San Diego State to do either, by the way. Like, again, I've said it before. My wife is an Aztec. I know that area well. I understand and have a good understanding of how popular that program is becoming in that region since they've lost the Chargers. And it's in an amazing market. It would profile really well, I think, eventually, if it can join and move up a league. And so it's a pretty attractive school, whichever spot it lands. And I don't think that they should get themselves stuck here either. And they haven't really had a good, I mean, the blame here falls to the Pac-12 for San Diego State ultimately, because all this timing wouldn't be a problem if the Pac-12 could deliver on anything that the league has promised as far as the TV rights deal. And the problem for San Diego State is until that happens, they're stuck because they can't get invited until a new deal is done, basically. And if a new deal that they don't like doesn't get done and teams bolt, that's when they become a more attractive Big 12, team perhaps. So they really don't have anything to do. I don't think, Tommy, they should go back. If the Mountain West comes back from these league meetings, which will happen later this month, without San Diego State in them, basically everybody's going to get together and decide what they want to do to San Diego State, and San Diego State won't be able to be a part of that. I think that they need to just hold tight. Like if they have to sit for a year in limbo, long term, if they do ultimately get an invite to either whatever the Pac-12 is or the Big 12 because it didn't go well for the Pac-12, that's still going to be better than limping through with the Mountain West in the long-term grand scheme of things. I think they just have to kind of wait here and be ready to jump at whichever one of those opportunities, because I do think one of those leagues will like San Diego State enough to make it happen, whether it's the Pac-12 who's trying to survive or whether it's the Big 12 who's trying to expand and pounce on the Pac-12, because at that point, it would mean they're a part of, from what we read, of an Arizona-Colorado expansion in some capacity.
I also wonder if there's an opportunity, and maybe it's sooner rather than later. Maybe we're not talking a couple of years from now, but there is an opportunity for Brett Yormark to get San Diego State in at a little bit of a discount, because they're in limbo right now. And, the Mountain West doesn't want them. They're not joining the Pac-12 because there's no media rights deal when that deadline came and went at the end of June. Maybe there's an opportunity for Brett Yormark, and, he's been very, very vocal. We know what his strategy is. He's been very vocal about wanting to get into that TV window out on the West Coast. And this would be a pretty easy way to make that happen. And San Diego State really doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. So the Big 12 could come in and say, hey, San Diego State, if you're looking for a life raft, we'll toss you one. You can come join the Big 12. It might not be as attractive of an offer as it would have been otherwise if there was more competition for your services in the conference, but you need us right now. And so we're willing to extend that offer to you. That might be an opportunity for Brett Yormark and the Big 12 to pounce on that.
I think that's a moderately bad idea, because it does open the door to potential grievance down the road. I think if you can do it without doing that, it's better. Like if you can talk the network, and it all obviously would depend on whether they can get like Colorado and Arizona into just adding, 4 teams. I think you're doing yourself a favor down the road and not having to, because then what's you got one team in the league that's not making as much as the rest. And what happens if that program continues to ascend and becomes a very valuable contributor? Now they've got a grievance because, like, man, we're making this league so much money and we're not making as much. That's what got the Big 12 into a jam with Texas, right? I don't know that that's the best option for the Big 12 if the Big 12 can afford it. Now, that may be the only option if that's all the network is willing to do. Like if the network's like, yeah, we'll take them, but it's going to have to be for less. And then I suppose at that point, Yormark can say, guys, this is all we can do right now.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not good for San Diego State. But giving one team more or less money the Big 12, you could make a case, is in this, who knows if the Longhorn Network stuff never happens, who knows where we're sitting today. But that, that angered a lot of people. A&M left. Like it was a mess when they tried to, give some more than others. I think the model of like the Big 10 and the SEC, where Rutgers and Vanderbilt get to, take advantage, that's probably still the easier way to navigate it if you're the Big 12. So I don't know. San Diego State's, they're going to remain an attractive program. Yeah. It just is, the timing of all of this depends on this dang Pac-12 deal.
Well, and that's the other thing with all of this too, is that we can talk about the bad leverage, the bad position that San Diego State is in. We can talk about the Mountain West, but really this boils down to the Pac-12 and not having a media rights deal done. If there was even a halfway attractive media rights deal in place for the Pac-12, I think that everybody would believe that San Diego State would be jolting off to the Pac-12,
Absolutely,
right?
Because it's still going to be better than the Mountain West, whatever it is.
100%. And so this is, again, just an expose of the failure of the Pac-12 not being able to get anything done, sitting on their hands for too long, losing their two most prominent members in USC and UCLA, and not doing anything aggressive to try to maintain the stature of their conference. And again, it's a case study of, you look at the way that Brett Yormark and the Big 12 have operated and the way that the Pac-12 have operated. Both conferences have lost major prominent members, and the Big 12 has been aggressive in going out and, it's quantity, it's getting new programs by large numbers and trying to be aggressive in a media deal. And then the Pac-12 is just sitting back and saying, "Oh, well, we got it. We got it. All these schools in our conference trust us. We'll get it figured out." And there's literally nothing on the table for them.
Yeah, it is a difficult spot because the Pac-12 obviously was caught off guard, and that's okay, I think, for them to be caught off guard. I don't know that anybody in there saw USC and UCLA leaving, just like Texas and Oklahoma, probably even more so, honestly, than Texas and Oklahoma. This one surprised us a little bit, and thankfully, Yormark, I don't know if he saw this coming with the economy and the unease of the industry and all of this. I don't know if that played into the reason that he was willing to go to the negotiating table early. But either way, it was the difference in all of this, right? Is the fact that the Big 12 got the deal done first. And, people in the Pac-12 laughed at that, right? At the time, like, oh, you overplayed your hand and all of these things. Well, it didn't take much to scare, these mega corporations. And now we're seeing the cuts again, right? Because it's cyclical almost at ESPN. And we know that, there are writers' strikes in Hollywood, which most of these networks are tied to in some capacity. Like, everything is just a little uneasy right now. So yeah, networks aren't lining up to throw hundreds of millions when they're all trying to slash. They'll be back. They'll be back in a couple of years. But the Pac-12's TV deal, Tommy, expires next year.
Yeah.
Like, it's out. It's done. Every other league basically every other Power 5 league goes to the end of the decade. The Pac-12 deal, it's not just that they don't have a new deal. Their current deal expires in 1 year. I cannot imagine the pressure right now if you're a Pac-12 school, and especially if the Big 12, and I don't know. Look, we all assume that if the Big 12 went and said, all right, Arizona and Colorado, and maybe it's San Diego State and UConn, whatever, like, we're all just assuming that ESPN would sign off on growing their deal to that. Now, that may already be in writing. Like, they may already be able to do that, even though that wouldn't count for San Diego State and UConn. But if it's from a Power 5 league, I think the language exists that they can join at the same price. But I don't know. Like, what's the guarantee that the networks even have interest in Big 12 expansion? Because I don't know that that's guaranteed either right now.
And what is the timeline before we start to see Colorado, Arizona, maybe even other programs that we haven't necessarily heard from up to this point, starting to jump ship, and this arbitrary June 30th deadline has come and gone, with the Pac-12 publicly saying that there would be a deal done, and then that date comes and goes with no deal. At what point, like, if I'm a chancellor or a president of one of these universities, I'm like, we have been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for nothing. We're going to start to explore other options and potentially get the heck out of here.
Yeah, it's all in Pac-12. And I just, this next deadline, I'm sick of whiffing on the football that Lucy continues to pull out from under me. Exactly. I don't think we're going to know anything at the end of the month when they say they hope to lay the framework of a new deal to the rest of the teams. They literally have
nothing. They've got nothing of significance right now, I don't think.
Right. Not linear, which is I think the sticking point, right? I'm sure that Apple or Amazon would like to come in and say, yeah, we'll match those dollars, because it'd be a pretty attractive addition for those places. But nobody wants that only. Like, if you don't have a linear option, we're still, as many people are cutting cords and doing all that stuff, because we're starting to get a pushback on that too, right? Like, oh yeah, cord cutting. But now everybody's realizing how expensive that is.
Yeah.
If you want
When
all
you
your
have to pay for
shows.
subscriptions on
Yeah, you start
multiple different
piling those up, and
platforms, and
guess
yeah, for
what?
sure.
That's
Yep.
what cable is. You want to know why
Yeah.
cable is expensive? Because it's basically taking all of your subscriptions, packing them into one place. That's cable television. Always has been. That's why cable's expensive. So I don't know. Like I think there may be a little swing back the other direction on that too. It's just not the right time for the Pac-12 to have this situation happen. You know, if this was 2 years ago, everything would probably be fine. They'd have probably already had a new partner, no big deal. Everybody be, moving on with their lives without you. But it's not. The timing's not right. And, sometimes in business, the timing's not right. We opened, Tommy, 2 businesses. The first one, timing was fine, right? Everything's good. Second one, like 8 months later, inflation happens. So we eat it with inflation on one end, and then we get rising interest rates on the back end. No reason other than timing. Absolutely out of everybody's control. Our costs go up, and like you're just like, oh, okay, well, that sucks. And that's what it is right now for the Pac-12. It's just timing. Like the timing for them on all of this is horrible. And you might like if they had a longer deal, you could just say, okay, well, we're going to kick the can down the road for like 2 years, right? Or a year and see where the economy is. They don't get that because their deal expires in a year. Maybe they can extend it. I don't know, but I don't know when they're going to get a deal done, but I just don't see it. I think it's becoming more and more likely that teams that would have never bolted and joined a league like the Big 12 are going to be very tempted to bolt. And I don't know who it will be. I mean, if you're the Big 12, swing for the fences, right? Go ask Washington and Oregon. Be like, hey, guys, you want to come in? Like, we got this deal. How would you like to join us?
What's Utah doing? What's Stanford doing? What's Arizona State doing?
And look, if you're the Big 12 too, like Utah's been the most arrogant, I think, publicly in all this.
Yeah.
Who cares? Come on in anyway, right? Like, bygones be bygones. That we're all water under the bridge here. Let's all be happy together and move on with our lives.
It's crazy how the tables have turned from it was about a year ago to now when Brett Yormark said that they were, what did he say, publicly shopping or open for, Pac-12 members, and the commissioner of the Pac-12 said, well, we're not open for business, or whatever that language was. Well, I mean, we're a year later and there might be some defections here pretty soon.
That's just crazy. Just crazy. Okay. So let's take a quick break. We plan on having Kevin Saul in the second hour, and we'll ask him about all this stuff and if he's been observing and watching. May not have time to pay attention to others, but it is interesting. Would love his perspective on that. So we'll have a shocker conversation as well, sort of get caught up on the summer there. We'll do that coming up in the show. We had a hot dog eating contest, NBA free agency. Shohei Ohtani leaves yesterday's game with an injury. Mike Trout's already been hurt. Anthony Rendon is hurt. The Angels are crumbling before us as we enter what will maybe the most interesting free agency in the history of sports with Shohei Ohtani. So we'll get into all of that. That's what's on tap. The IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. If you'd like to get in touch with the program, it's Sports Daily. It's a Wednesday. It's the day after a big holiday. We'll all struggle through it together, trying to get ourselves back into the groove of a work week. We'll be right back.
Sports Radio 24/7. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It's Sports Daily, KFH. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Caster alongside you here on this Wednesday. Hey, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is coming to Boulevard Theaters in Wichita, and you can check it out a day early. We're giving away a pair of tickets for a special screening on Thursday, July 13th, 7 o'clock. That's at Boulevard Theaters, Town West. Again, Thursday, July 13th at 7 o'clock, a pair of tickets for a special screening, a sneak peek, if you will. We'll give away a couple of those tickets to our first caller here in this segment to get you into that movie, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. It looks exactly like you think it would. Mission Impossible, blow it up, fly around on jets, do all the cool stuff. Here we go. All right, Tommy, let's talk a little Major League Baseball. Yesterday, Mike Trout in the last couple of days has a wrist injury. He's having a down year. Yesterday, Shohei Ohtani had to leave the game. He was pitching because he continues to have like fingernail blister type issues. Anthony Rendon fouled a ball off of his foot, so he had to also leave the game. So there goes your three best players if you're the Angels, who are trying to cling at 2 games above 500 to any sort of wild card life. But man, it just seems like there's about a 0% chance that Shohei Ohtani is going to be an Angel after this year. Right? Like I don't see any path to that.
Is there a more snake bitten franchise in Major League Baseball? Maybe over the last, 5 seasons than the Angels, and maybe even going back further than that. And we talked about it before. When you have talent, generational talent on your roster in the form of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, there are multiple teams in Major League Baseball that would kill to have one of those guys on their roster. And the Angels have both of them, and they've been unable to get it done. I have a hard time thinking that the Angels are going to be able to come back from this and have the wherewithal to get back into the playoff hunt. Depends on how long Mike Trout is on the injured list for with that broken hamate bone. And then if Shohei Ohtani, I wouldn't be surprised if they rest him pitching. He already said he wasn't going to pitch in the All-Star game because of that blister. So the timing on that is okay. Because you get that all-star break to be able to rest and heal up. But it wouldn't be surprising to me if they maybe hold him back a little bit in pitching over the next, 2 or 3 weeks or so, just to make sure that he's healthy. But man, they've got a lot of work to do if they want to get back into contention. I know that they are in the mix for a wild card spot. But man, with that kind of talent on your roster, I know they've got to compete in a division with the Astros and the Rangers and even the Mariners and their young talent. But man, I would have thought more from the Angels, and I thought that the last couple of years, like with those two guys, and then of course you add in Anthony Rendon and others, they should be a playoff team, and they just really haven't been.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're the fourth best team in their own division. I think Seattle's better on paper and a game behind them in the standings. So I don't think it's very likely, honestly. Unless they made some big time trade deadline moves, which don't make a lot of sense in the addition. But that brings up the elephant in the room, Tommy. Should the Angels think about trading away Shohei Ohtani here? I don't know how you could justify it to your fan base when you're technically in contention. But I feel like for the franchise itself, like the best thing that could happen is they go on a bad losing streak here, get further out of contention right before the deadline. And then if that happens, again, because I don't think there's any chance Ohtani's coming back there, I think you could have a fascinating trade scenario if that were to become the case. And like, could you imagine even on the rental, like because you could get him as the pitcher, right, for the postseason and as the hitter. Oh boy, because I'd do it if I was the Angels. I'd do it in a second because you're going to get a haul for a rental player when you don't typically get hauls for rental players anymore.
But is there a team that would be willing to give up
the Rangers
everything?
Would do it in a second.
Really? I mean, you're basically depleting your
Yep.
farm system, right, for a rental. And that we've
I
seen that
would.
sort of thing before. Like we've seen teams, throw a couple of prospects out to get a superstar for a rental down the stretch, but nobody at the level of Shohei Ohtani. So that would make me think that, I mean, how many prospects are we talking?
For
4, 5? What are we looking at here?
maybe I don't know that it would be that big. I think you do it like a team like the Rangers would do it because they're pretty set now and have spent the money where it's not like they're in a dire need for their prospects to come up anyway. So I think they would be in a position to do something like that. And the other thing about trading for Ohtani is in the back of your head, maybe it makes you think like, okay, and then we could also start the negotiating table of his free agency early. And maybe at that point we could, get a leg up on the competition there. And like for a team like Texas or, and I think there are probably others in the mix that would come in the mix. I think the Yankees would do it.
Yeah.
I think Toronto would probably be in the mix and be thinking about it. It's teams.
The Giants
the
would
Yankees,
do it. I think the Dodgers would do it. I
the
don't
Dodgers
have
would do it because I think they're in the leader in the clubhouse to get him in the offseason anyway. But they may also see that as, we can get him for free. We probably don't.
I'm not sure that there's any scenario where the Angels trade him within the division. So I can't.
That would be the only holdup. But that's such a stupid thing, by the way. Like, why did take the best return? Like, why do you care about that? Take the best return because that's ultimately what's going to make the difference for your franchise anyway. I don't think if Texas did trade for him, and I haven't heard that, by the way, I haven't seen any reporting that they'd be interested. I still don't think that's going to be where he ends up in free agency. Most people you read think it's going to be the Dodgers. I don't know what it will take there, but just from a rental perspective, a guy that helps you both places, it just like his free agency will be, becomes, a trade asset unlike any we've ever seen before because he's like trading for two players. And, there are a lot of paths to do it, but some of these teams like the Rangers, the Blue Jays, like some of these teams that don't have a World Series that have been so close, and it's in the Blue Jays case, it's been so long, right? More than 30 years. Like that's where you're like, let's give our fans this because both of those organizations are pretty set. Now, the Rangers don't really have that type of prospect where it's like a can't touch, no chance in hell we're trading this guy play. I don't know that type player has to be included in this, but it could be most of the top end. You give up 2-3 blue chippers, basically top 100, top 50 type prospects and get this done. And I think it would be a price worth paying if you're trying to get that ultimate prize, but it has to be a team that isn't going to sacrifice. Like Baltimore's not doing this because Baltimore needs those prospects to survive. It's got to be one of the teams that can survive in free agency, who can be a player in free agency, not have to worry about that as much. But it's an interesting scenario to think of because the Angels aren't going to get there this year unless they go nuts adding pieces through the trade deadline. And from everything that I've heard, read, whatever, it's like a 0% chance he comes back to the Angels. So if that's the case and you're the Angels, put him on the market. Like even Shohei Ohtani's not immune to that. Like your fan base may hate that for right now. That may just like devastate them, but you can get them on board with that. Like, guys, we understand that we don't think that we were going to be a player for him in the offseason. The reality of the situation is we had a chance to really, strengthen our organization. So we're going to make this deal. I think the fans would be on board with that pretty quick, as long as you make the right trade.
Yeah, you better hope too, if you are the Angels front office, that this blister from Shohei Ohtani is nothing major and that he's able to come back because, I mean, there's going to be a team that would trade for him regardless because of he's a unicorn, right? But you want him if you are even going to entertain the potential of trading him before the deadline, you want to make sure that you are getting 100% value in return from him. You want to make sure that he's performing at 100%, that he's not dealing with blisters. He might be able to still hit and play DH and do all that. But if there are issues pitching, then that might bring down the value slightly. So this is going to be, if the Angels want to entertain the idea of moving him before the deadline, then you've got the opportunity to get a haul in return. Make sure that he's at 100% before you do so.
Yeah, he's out. I mean, I don't think there's that many unequivocal reports that say he's out if he's not out. He must be making that known. I don't know where that stuff's coming from, but if he's out, if he's not going to be an Angel, trade him. Why wouldn't you? Like, why not? I suppose you could say because we think we can make the playoffs this year, and that's an acceptable answer. But if it goes south on you quickly here, when you look at the landscape of the American League, right, you've got to, like, in theory, Houston and Texas are ahead of you in your own division. Seattle might be, you know, and then you're going to have to deal with some combination, if assuming Tampa hangs on, right? Some combination of Baltimore, the Yankees, Toronto, Boston. So the Angels are basically trying to position with Baltimore, the Yankees, Toronto, Boston, Houston, Seattle. I'd put the Angels at the bottom of that list, right? Like,
yeah, I think you're right.
It doesn't feel like they're particularly close in that
because
wild card spot.
A lot of those other teams are more complete. The Angels are more top heavy, and now, I mean, I don't even know if you can call them more top heavy now that Mike Trout's on the injured list, but they're not. They don't have a complete roster. They've got a couple of superstars, but they don't have a complete roster like some of these other teams in the American League do. And so if you, especially even in your division, if you're trying to go up against the complete top to bottom roster that Houston has and that Tampa Bay has and that even Texas has, you're going to need to do more. Even as amazing and brilliant as Shohei Ohtani is, he can't do it all by himself. He's directly led to quite a few wins for that franchise, but he can't single-handedly take you to the playoffs.
Their offense is great. Their pitching is not. Of that group of teams, and if you include Seattle there, which Cleveland, I'm sorry, there, some might, they have the worst pitching of the group. They've allowed the most runs. Boston's right there with them, but everybody else, it's a pretty healthy margin that they've allowed more. So it's not, it doesn't look like a team that is going to all of a sudden catapult themselves there, and you're grasping at straws. And I know that you've got the ire for not being able to do anything when you've had Trout and now Ohtani, and Trout's, over the hump in his career. And we've likely seen the best of Mike Trout. It's now a question of how long can he extend it, but it's not going to work. Like, you're going to have to bite the bullet. You're going to, because if he's not coming back, like, if you don't have a legitimate thought that you could get him back, you might be able to change the trajectory of your franchise on a rental player. That doesn't happen anymore. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. But it would for him. He's the guy. I never advocate for that kind of thing, but I would totally do that for Shohei Ohtani based on what he could impact for your team going down the stretch if you're a contender. Maybe they think they are contenders. I don't know, but it's an interesting dynamic. It's sort of ahead of what's going to be a fascinating free agency to see if he, for any reason, becomes a trade candidate. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Odyssey and KYN bring you Concerts in the Park, sponsored by IHOP. Free live music Friday from 8 to 10 in Andover Central Park at the Capitol Federal Amphitheater, 1607 East Central Avenue in Andover. This Friday, it's Lucky People. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, extra cash for the food trucks, no coolers. Gates open at 6:30. Tom and I'll be back. We'll talk a little hot dog eating next.
For his 16th win, I give you the #1 ranked eater in the world, Joey Chestnut.
Joey does it again. No surprise. Couldn't challenge his record. There's a rain delay in the hot dog eating contest. So that probably derailed any opportunity to go out and take down his record, which is somewhere north of 70. It's what we do on July 4th now. We had the hot dog eating contest, and Joey Chestnut is the unchallenged king of it. Somebody's going to come along at some point and be better, I would imagine. But where do you fall on the eating contest, Tommy?
There's nothing that says celebrating America like watching a dude guzzle down glizzies for 10 minutes.
Destroy hot dogs. Yeah, I agree.
And, that just says God bless America right there. Joey Chestnut, I don't know if a lot of people put him up on like the Mount Rushmore of athletes in this country. I think he's up there. I think you can consider him an athlete. He's a competitive eater.
Oh, I think there is a physical there's a
to
physical
it for sure.
component to what he does. I don't it's a little hyperbolic to do that in the entire sports spectrum, but I do love the throw the bird to the rest of the world and say, watch us, do what we do and celebrate and have fun, and just the stupidity of it being celebrated and how much fun we have with it. That is what it's all about. Like, this is what we're going to do on this day. What are we going to do?
Yep.
We're going to eat hot dogs.
We're going to watch a guy eat 60 some hot dogs in 10 minutes, and then we're going to blow a bunch of stuff up and drink a bunch of beer and call it good. God bless America.
The next day. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. I think it's, I think it's interesting. I probably said this before over the years here, but so in Amarillo where I worked, we did a summer tour, and each day for a week, we would go to some of the really small towns around the area, and they would put on like big town parties. It was exhausting, but it was fun. And for whatever reason, the sports guys, of which I was one of, always got roped into eating contests, like whatever random eating contest. Now, I am a Chick-fil-A chicken nugget eating champion. I've got the trophy somewhere. So I like this. It's not something that I'm afraid of. I enjoy it. We took down like these big burly, sheriff's deputies in a challenge. And so I enjoy the fact that you can sneak up on people if you're somebody of my size, which would be described as probably scrawny, and take them down in an eating contest of some sort. So you don't want to back down from the challenges, but I know how hard it is. Like, it is brutal in an eating contest. I've done everything from ice cream to hamburgers to hot dogs to pizza to chicken nuggets to the worst one, pancakes, a pancake eating contest. So I appreciate it. It's hard.
Yeah, I had to do the only one I've ever done when I worked full-time in radio a long time ago. I did a burrito eating contest at Carlos O'Kelly's, and it was like a 10-pound burrito that me and someone else, we had to eat together in 30 minutes or less. We got it done, but thank goodness it was a Friday night, because I was out for the entire weekend, like down for the count. Couldn't get off the couch. I don't
like the ones where you have to finish a certain amount. I like the ones where you have a set amount of time and how much can you eat in that time. Right. Far less miserable in the aftermath, in my experience.
Have you done the pie with your hands behind your back and you have to like bob for the pie?
No, I haven't done that one yet. We had a weather guy though, and I hope I have enough time to tell this story. We had a weather guy. So the big Texan steak ranches in Amarillo, it's with the 72-ounce steak that you've probably seen the signs for. We had a weather guy do that one time. Shotgun Shell, good buddy. We sort of came into the business together. He does it live on air, gets it. And as soon as he finishes his live shot, like they cut, he immediately goes to the sides of the stage and hurls everywhere. It was epic. It was like the timing was, they didn't get it on camera, but man, he was hanging on by a thread there. God bless America. All right, we'll come back. Kevin Saul should be joining us at the top of the next hour. I want to ask him about some of this conference realignment stuff in other places and just how much pressure there is in that world. And we'll check in on all things Shockers as we make our way through the summer. That's coming up. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily right after this.
Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Hey, Shocker fans, want the latest on Wichita State athletics? Let's go right to the source with Shocker AD Kevin Saul.
And we welcome back into hour number 2, starting things off with a little Shocker talk. Kevin Saul joining us here, Wichita State Athletic Director. Kevin, did you celebrate the 4th appropriately? How are you today?
Well, good morning. Thanks for having us on the show. Yeah, we had a good time, and hope you guys had a great holiday as well. So how you doing this morning?
We're staggered. We're exhausted. It's a 4th of July Tuesday means about 4 days of 4th of July celebrations, and coming in now on a Wednesday. We're old. We're reminded of that, and today's a great reminder. It's like we're pooped.
It's like you tried to catch the 9 p.m. Pacific time MLB baseball game, and you just couldn't put it down. All of a sudden, it's 1 o'clock, and you got to go to work the next morning.
Yeah, we're living the West Coast lifestyle here in the Central Time Zone. July 4th is an interesting time. Like, there's not a ton happening, as far as games with the program. So as we enter a month like July, and we're getting closer to to season starting back up, where do priorities lie this time of year for an athletics program?
Well, I think the summer is used to really, look at the productivity cycle where we plan and prepare, execute, evaluate, plan and prepare. And so there's a lot of evaluation and planning and preparation that goes on, evaluating the previous academic year and athletic year, but also preparing for the next one. So obviously we're about a month away from student athletes returning to campus with our volleyball student athletes, and so setting up our physicals, our academics and compliance meetings. We're finishing up hiring a few positions within our department administratively. And so it's somewhat of a time for us to evaluate, reset, and then plan and prepare for the next year.
Kevin, last week we had Paul Mills on the show. Great to talk to him a little bit. And he talked with us about the importance from his perspective on doing an overseas trip. So the first time since 2016 that the Shocker basketball program will go overseas. From your perspective as athletic director, what do you see as the major benefits for the program being able to go play overseas?
Tommy, it's a great question. I would be very much aligned with Coach Mills in terms of the opportunity to get an additional 10 practices with your team. Obviously, we've had significant turnover in our roster. The presence of, obviously a coaching change, but also the transfer portal and NIL will lend itself to that turnover every single year. And so going into his first year, I think it's a great opportunity for our team to get to know one another, not only from a relational perspective, but also on the basketball floor, in the weight room, understanding a new system, new coaching staff. So it gives us an opportunity to do that through additional practices. Also gives us an opportunity to test drive our travel protocol, but also get valuable competition as well. And so gives you a great opportunity to see multiple combinations of players and lineups on the floor. So we think it gives us a good competitive advantage as we enter in the next season.
Kevin, a big part of, I know that the goals and everything has to do with, facilities upgrades, fundraising, NIL opportunities. As we look back at, the first year, because it's been roughly a year since you've been able to step in, I open the door a little bit to us to the progress now versus what you walked into. How much better has that component gotten for Wichita State?
Well, I certainly think we've made significant progress. We've in terms of scope of work, there's been a lot that's been done here in the last year. Started on July 5th last year. That was the first day. So it's today is officially the start of year 2. And we've got a tremendous administrative staff. We've got great relationships on campus. And so as we entered in with a specific set of values and strategic objectives. We've worked really hard to improve a lot of different areas, whether that's the game experience, fan experience, how we're structured internally, trying to develop some efficiencies. Certainly, we've had some changes on with 3 of our different coaching staffs. The fundraising piece has progressed well. We've been able to cross the finish line on $1 million renovation of the Charles Koch Arena weight room that will be dedicated to Friday night TBT game. We believe Fred will be back in town, and we're going to honor the folks that have given so generously to that project. But just a lot of great things going on. We could probably spend multiple segments on that. I'm proud of the accomplishments that our staff and our teams have made. Our young people have worked really, really hard in the classroom and in competition. We achieved something that's never been done before in the history of our athletics program, in a 3.406 department-wide GPA this past spring. We had a 3.34 in the fall. And so those critical elements that are so much a part of the intercollegiate athletics experience and the higher education experience, I think we're performing well. And year 2, I look for us to really launch forward in specific fundraising for NIL and Alston. We've got to remain competitive in those 2 spaces. We also have significant fundraising priorities with Wilkins Stadium and Cessna as well. And so we've got a lot on the plate. Really proud of year 1 and looking forward to year 2.
Kevin, I want to follow up real quick on, you mentioned Fred VanVleet signing a huge contract with the Rockets over the weekend. From your perspective as the AD for Wichita State and knowing the major connection that he has to the university, what does that mean to you when you're looking at, other players, other student athletes at the university, and knowing that there's that potential there for student athletes to be able to, perform at the highest level and cash in professionally?
That's a great question. I look at guys like Fred VanVleet. I look at Sidney McKinney, previous stops that I've been to before, whether it was John Morant or other phenomenal young people that have done remarkable things. I look at those folks as pathway individuals. They define a pathway at a particular institution. In the specific case of Fred VanVleet, he's been an incredible ambassador to basketball, to Wichita State University, to Shocker Athletics, obviously contributing significantly during his time here, and those contributions have continued since he left. He communicated a priority in the weight room. He was willing to put his time and treasure behind that priority, which really launched additional gifts. And we were able to, with his primary gift, we were able to get to $1 million on the weight room renovation very quickly. And so I don't think you can overstate his contributions to our department. We're incredibly appreciative of him and his family for doing that. We look forward to honoring him in late July.
All right, Kevin, I want to ask you, Kevin Saul, Wichita State Athletic Director, joining us, and it's going to be awesome for Fred to be back in town on that. We're excited about that. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to this San Diego State situation, which is just crazy and nuts as the Pac-12 tries to figure their situation out and teams are ending in flux. Do you remember ever seeing anything like that? Like, hey, Mountain West, we're going to break up with you. Oh, wait, no, we're not. Now we don't have a place to go. Like, what a mess. And is it like, does the ripple effect of what's happening with the Pac-12, how far does that reach? Does that reach everybody basically to watch that? And how important is that, do you think, for the industry?
Well, I think if you were to zoom out, Jacob, conference realignment has been in existence and really full force since the mid-1990s. You can look at the early 90s, the SEC. You can look at the Big 8 to Big 12 transition in the mid-90s, and you can look at what's occurred over the last 10, 12, 15 years. I attended TCU, and in my time at Texas Christian University, 3 years, we were in 3 different athletic leagues. And so conference realignment has been something that has been at the forefront of our industry for multiple decades. As I've mentioned before, I think it's college athletics is an industry that's built on passion and emotion, and I think perspectives are broad and varied, right? I think sports talk radio, what you guys do is awesome because I think it brings perspectives and opinions to the forefront. I certainly have a perspective on what's going on with San Diego State, but I wouldn't say that it's the most informed perspective because, I'm not in those conference rooms and I'm not on those phone calls. And so I don't know specifically the variables that are in play or the strategies on both the side of the institution and the league. But I can share with you that the institutions and the leagues are aligned in the sense that they want to position themselves best for the future. And we'll continue to do that. It's something that we have to watch as administrators because obviously with the American Athletic Conference, you're hearing SMU being a regular part of that conversation in terms of with the Pac-12. You hear occasionally about Memphis, and so something that we watch very carefully. We've talked about it before on the show. I think Commissioner Oresco is advanced in his thoughts there, and he's got contingency plans for what all that looks like. We just welcomed 6 new members into our institution, into our conference 4 days ago. And so I think we're positioned well, but something we'll obviously keep our eyes on.
So, Kevin, is that something, obviously July 1st was the date when Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF left the American officially to go to the Big 12 and then the new schools joining the American. Is that something at your level with the institution at Wichita State and your day-to-day responsibilities that you notice? Is it something that is just, it really won't be a big deal until the competitions begin with these new schools? Or have you felt over the last 4 days since this change has been made any sort of differences in the conference, or is it more of just a logistical and officially these teams are joining now?
Well, I think that there's an element to that where it's logistical, but as soon as the information was released and announced, obviously you have to take a deep dive into scheduling, into the finances, the travel, all of those components, which we've done throughout the FY24 budget planning process. We have engaged with our coaching staff in regards to scheduling. Obviously, we have a goal in all of our sports to position ourselves as an at-large selection in the NCAA tournament. In order to do so, you really have to take into account overall strength of schedule, league strength of schedule. And so I think that's been a topic that we've been working through for several months, obviously, since the announcement. July 1st is an important day in terms of those institutions officially becoming a part of the league. But the work to prepare for that started many months ago.
Kevin, is it different? And I know we've asked this question before, but just a reminder for people, like when you don't have football, it's sometimes hard to remember, but it seems like there's two different things happening almost. There's the football side of it, and then there's everything else. But is it difficult or does it just change anything to not have football when these types of things are happening?
Well, I think, we've got 15 sports in our athletics program, and every single one of those sports is touched in some form or fashion by conference realignment and new institutions coming in and 3 institutions leaving. And so I think it impacts us in just as significant a way as anybody else. Obviously, there's a significant element there from a football competitive standpoint that is not on our plate at Wichita State. But there's plenty on our plate to navigate. So we want to position each of our programs in the next 5 years to win a league championship. League composition is a significant factor in that objective. We won 2 this last year. We need to be on an average clip of about 3 per year over the next 5 years if we're going to meet our strategic objective of winning 15 conference championships in 5 years. And so I think it's certainly a factor not having football, but at the same time, we're going to position all 15 of our programs in such a way that we can win a league championship in the next 5 years.
I want to go back to something, Kevin, that you mentioned a few minutes ago. Not only the renovations and upgrades at Wilkins, but also the changes that are happening at Cessna Stadium. I'd seen pictures of it, but I didn't really, I guess, understand the scope of the project until I was driving down 21st last week. And like, okay, well, yeah, this is a big deal. I know that it seems like in the public eye, the upgrades at Wilkins, that's kind of the marquee project. But there's a lot going on at Cessna Stadium too. So for folks that don't really know exactly what's happening at Cessna, could you walk us through that?
Absolutely, I'd be glad to. So obviously we have a long-standing tradition with State High School track, and it's been really important to us to sequence and phase that project in such a way where we minimize or mitigate any negative influence on State High School track. And so we began the demolition of the east side immediately after State High School track this past May. If you drive by on 21st between Oliver and Hillside, you can certainly see that east side has been completely demoed down to the ground. That east side will expand towards the east. Between now and next State High School track, we will be constructing gates, plazas, concessions, restrooms, seating on the east side. The track will actually expand a bit towards the east so that we can widen it out to be able to get a soccer competition surface inside the track and pave the way for a future women's soccer program at Wichita State. So that's considered phase 1A, is that east side. At the conclusion of State High School track in May of 24, so a year from now, we will begin phase 1B, which is the event level. The event level will see a new 9-lane expanded track. It'll see space for a future women's soccer program on the inside. We'll start with natural grass on the inside. And phase 1B also includes spectator seating around the curves, both on the north and south side. Phase 1A and 1B, the funding has been secured for that. And we are in the process of fundraising for phase 2, which is the west side. Obviously, the most involved and significant from an expense standpoint on the west side. The goal is to begin the west side after State High School track in May of 25. That gives us a little runway for the fundraising and development efforts that need to take place to do that. That facility will obviously have seating on the west side. It will have team support spaces, facility support spaces up underneath, concessions, restrooms, team rooms, locker rooms. We're looking at a upgraded athletic training space under that west side as well. Press box, timing functions for track meets, press and game operations for soccer, in addition to some premium seating and deck options on that west side as well. The other thing that we'd love to be able to accomplish as a part of that west side renovation is to be able to create a unique connection between Cessna Stadium and Koch Arena. And so we're certainly trying to develop our thoughts from that perspective as well to gain some efficiencies to help our program out from a revenue perspective. So we got a lot of great things going on. It's basically a 3-phase project, phase 1A, 1B, and phase 2 that will be occurring over the next 3 years. And we were working really hard to raise the funds to make phase 2 happen after May of 25.
All right, Kevin. Well, the next time we talk, it'll be right before, I believe, the TBT. So we'll get more on the celebration there, and that's good info on the weight room and all that with Fred coming in, and it will be one heck of a weekend now. With KU and K-State's alumni teams as a part of this. So looking forward to that the next time we talk, and maybe a little insight on this men's hoops team and as they get some practices in and everything else. But we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
All right. Sounds great. Jacob, Tommy, thanks so much for having us on the show, and go Shockers.
There goes Kevin Saul, Wichita State Athletic Director. If you joined us late, missed any of that conversation, you can always go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. Tommy and I'll be back. More Sports Daily coming at you right after this. right. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to be with you. Rainy morning here around the area. Rained a lot last night. It was cool. The fireworks, if you looked off to the north, anywhere here in Wichita, your fireworks show last night was accompanied by a pretty good lightning show with that storm that eventually made its way down here, I think. It does lend itself, Tommy, to the groggy nature of today for whatever reason. Whether you were up too late, whether you just had a little too much fun, maybe for about 4 days in a row, whatever it is, you get that rain, and you're right when you said it earlier. It's like, I do not want to get out of this bed right now.
Yep.
Let's help some people perk up for the day. We'll give you a HTO coffee and iced tea card, get you caffeinated here with us on Sports Daily. We'll do it for our first caller here during this segment, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Jad will get you set up. Locations east and west. Coffee is just available east. The tea is available both places. That'll go to our first caller here. HTO, couple of cards, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline.
And real quick, guys,
Tommy, it is it's a hard time to catch our breath today on this. We've bounced around a little bit. If you missed anything on the Shohei Ohtani conversation, which Tommy pointed out, some of us getting a little national run. We didn't know that sort of came out of nowhere, right? We weren't planning on that conversation. We were sort of talking about Ohtani as a free agent and what he might command, which I've heard people say things like $70 million a year, which just seems crazy. But, if you missed anything on our potential trade conversation, you can go back and listen. Jad, how are you feeling today?
Oh, I'm kind of groggy, just like you were saying. It's interesting. You brought up the weather earlier. I did want to point out we are actually still under a flood warning.
Oh man,
yeah. Early this morning when I got in here at about a little before 3 or a little after or a little before 4 a.m. this morning, we had a severe thunderstorm warning. So I rush into the studio and kind of get things going and start doing all the storm warning stuff and everything super early this morning. Didn't last all that long, but they started up a severe or not a severe thunderstorm warning, but also a flood warning, and they've extended that to like 5:15 tonight.
Oh man,
yeah,
wow.
So it does go on for quite some time. Yeah,
I haven't even gotten caught up on everything with the Storm Team 12 because the TV obligations, I usually am relatively aware of what to expect in the weather each day because it's part of what we do. But I'm like, it's just it's like hard to catch up in life right now. Like, where are we right now? Oh yeah, you're right. I'm looking at the Storm Team 12 app here, and yeah, we're gonna have rain for still a little while longer today, which I suppose is good when we've been playing with fire the last couple of days. Get things wet, and we'll always take the rain around here, certainly, but. Yeah, it's been an even longer morning for Jad. So, apologies there, Jad, that you've been having to deal with that as we all try
no problem, guys.
zombie our way through a regular week here now. Joey Chestnut retains. Attaboy Joey Chestnut. Make us all proud. God bless America. We hit on that as well. Tommy, the Royals continue to struggle a bit, but Bobby Witt Jr. is really heating up. And so this is where this gets interesting because there are some who think he would be a candidate to be traded at this deadline. I'm not one of those, but he is heating up now, and this is going to get interesting because his upside is through the roof still. I have never been ready or willing to panic on him. And here we go, as he's been good the last, month or so. June was really nice, and July, as he hits another home run yesterday, is off to a nice start.
Yeah, I mean, we may not be able to get him at maximum value if the Royals want to trade him before the trade deadline, but at least that value is increasing. It's not, not where it was a month ago or 2 months ago. I think that if the Royals decide that they want to move him, and they decide it's going to be just a massive fire sale and everybody goes, I think that you can get a pretty solid return right now for Bobby Witt Jr. It may not be maximum value. And so I think that may prohibit them from wanting to do that. But if they did make that decision to just completely blow the whole thing up, I think you can get a pretty solid return for him.
Yeah, it's I still don't think it makes sense yet, because I think you could, if he reaches potential and you do end up needing to trade him, you can get it done where he's got just absurd value next year or the year after that, even still. And that could really change the trajectory of a franchise. Or he continues to be awesome and you pull a rabbit out of your hat and are better than people expect over the next 2 or 3 years. I just don't think he makes a ton of sense for a lot of reasons. I don't think the timing of it right now helps you that much, because I don't want it. We've talked about max value and all that stuff, but his value in controllable years is going to retain in the trade market for a little while. So I'm looking at CBS Sports as far as trade. It sort of ranks trade candidates for the deadline. And CBS Sports still has Scott Barlow as its ninth top, is a sort of a list ranking where like Max Scherzer is number 1. Scott Barlow is number 9. So they still see some value there in Scott Barlow. I'm trying to look and see if there's any other Royals on the list. There's not, of this top 20 list that we're looking at, but Barlow looks like, if that's any indication, that's still a pretty attractive trade piece. And I think he's the third, if I'm counting him right on that list of a top 20, the third ranked reliever on that list. And some of the other guys are question marks, like Josh Hader, for example. Like, are the Padres really going to sell? So it could be like by osmosis, Scott Barlow could end up as still one of the top guys out there on the market.
You remember when Josh Hader, I know you just brought him up. Remember when he got traded to the Padres and it was a disaster? And he had like major upside and was lights out dominant in Milwaukee, and the Padres brought him in and his ERA was like double digits. Like, it was
crazy,
terrible. I don't know why. I just thought, you mentioned him. There's always that potential, especially if you're grabbing a bullpen piece and you're a contender down the stretch, that it might not work out in the short term. That might be a risk for Scott Barlow, who hasn't had a great month or so recently. Again, it goes back to what we've talked about before. Contenders have to, if they're going to bring in a Scott Barlow, you got to think that, they like his stuff more than they like his results over the last month or so with the Royals.
Yeah, I think that he's pretty attractive on the trade market still. And that's relative term, right? Because you're not bringing Scott Barlow in to be a closer. I don't think any team is doing that. But even with his struggles recently, Scott Barlow is a handy reliever with a ton of experience in the back end of games for now 3 years. I think he's got value. And, what the return on that is, or how do you maximize that, I don't know. There's plenty of teams, as we've mentioned lots of times, that need relievers, and some that need lots of relievers. I think that the Royals, if they play their cards right, could leverage that a little bit. I think Chapman was clearly a more attractive piece at this point just because he still throws it so hard. But Barlow's handy. Like, I would still have confidence in Barlow if I was a contending team. I don't know if he's to the point where you just like hand him an inning at this point. He might be, but crafty at any point, like a useful piece. I would think Scott Barlow could still be a useful piece for just about every major league bullpen. I do still think he's good enough to be that.
I think so too. I don't think that he's going to go to a contender and be a shutdown dominant closer for that contender, right?
No.
I think that he can be a mid to late innings arm, like maybe a 6th or 7th inning guy, get you a few outs, and set up, and hold the door open for the closer to come in and shut it down. That's kind of, I think, the role that Barlow will play, depending on the team that he gets traded to. If you're a contender in either league, and needing some bullpen help to get over the hump, I'm not sure you look at Scott Barlow as this is going to be our guy. Like when the Padres traded for Josh Hader, he was supposed to be the guy, the shutdown closer to end the game for the Padres. That's not going to be Scott Barlow's role.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is either. But you never know though. Like you get into a team like the Rangers. I mean, their bullpen is a joke right now, and I don't know as much about other bullpens as I do. But even if you,
By the
I
way,
mean,
what
if you,
happened the other day with the Rangers? They were playing the Astros and had a huge
oh, it went
comeback, and
back
then the
and
bullpen let
forth
them down, right?
again. Like it happened 3 times in that series. That happened, by the way, 3 times in that series against the Astros. The bullpen let them down, and it's happened all year. I mean, I if they had any sort of and I thought that before coming into this year as a Rangers fan, I was like, man, they're a couple bullpen pieces away from being really, really good. I didn't think they'd be this good because things have gone really well, and it's despite getting almost nothing out of Jacob deGrom. But I've been concerned about the bullpen forever, and it has been a mega problem all year, and they're still 15 games above 500. I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I'd say that it'd be at least 6 or 7 games better, probably more if they had any sort of respectable bullpen, but they don't. And it's Bruce Bochy managing that team too, like the bullpen Zen master, right? The guy that always gets it right in the bullpen. They just don't have anybody there. And if you're the Royals, and yeah, I know you already traded Chapman, the Rangers are probably more desperate now than they were when you traded Chapman. I'd go right back to that well if I'm the Royals. Hey, saw things didn't go so well in that 4-game Houston series for you. We got another piece. You want to kick us back another decent, prospect and maybe a guy further down the pipeline? Okay. I mean, the Rangers are going to get desperate here, and they're not the only ones, right? With the third
And by the way,
card, it
right,
makes it a seller's market every year.
and with the Rangers, it's not like, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you're a bigger fan of following them closely, more closely than I do. It's not like they need a lot of other pieces. It's the bullpen, right? Like
That's it.
they
They probably now that DeGrom is out, they probably need another starter in reality, and they'll probably go get one. Like they'll be in the mix for Scherzer. I can almost guarantee it. Maybe they are for Verlander, maybe they are for both. The Rangers are going to push it all in this year, and they need to. They should, because they've done a nice job through free agency in the last 2 seasons of sort of setting themselves up at the big league level where they're not as desperate to call up guys. Like they kind of are set, right? In just about everywhere except like nothing in the bullpen, and they do have a slight hole in the rotation because you're sort of counting on DeGrom being that hammer. So they're going to be pretty active here. And I would take advantage of that if I were the Royals, because they're ready to push it all in. I'm pretty convinced. That's why you make an early move for Aroldis Chapman. And so that's who you identify if you're the Royals. You got to go identify those teams. It's a seller's market. It's always going to be a seller's market when you have a third wild card, because more than half the league feels like they're in contention.
Right. And I like that Royals Rangers connection. Chris Young is running things in
They're
Texas
in Surprise, Arizona together in the spring.
Of course, Chris Young has a history with the Royals organization. They've already made one trade, to bring Aroldis Chapman to the Rangers. So you feel like you've already got a fairly receptive trade partner. I think it would make sense for them to go back to the Rangers again and say, hey, we have another bullpen piece if you want to try to put something together for him.
I feel like it was in April when I said, hey, Aroldis Chapman's going to be a Ranger. Mark it down in ink. And that is a part of it. Yeah, they do. Chris Young's familiarity. They're in Surprise. Like these two teams work together all spring. They know each other's players. And so it is a natural fit. And maybe that's advantageous for both, because the Royals know their prospects probably better than anybody does because they see them all spring, and the Rangers know what the Royals have because they see them all spring. And so Scott Barlow makes a lot of sense. I thought they'd get traded together. Honestly, I thought that's what was going to happen. And maybe they get traded separately. And if they get traded separately, that's going to be better for the Royals, because the Royals can take advantage right now. The Royals, you don't have much, but you have something in a seller's market. We're going to see what Piccolo has, chops wise, because if it's Piccolo or whoever it is, one of the keys to the Royals getting back, I think there are 2 things that are absolutely critical. They have to get better at scouting players, which they've not been good at, and they have to become shrewd traders, right? You have to win trades. You have to win deals. I don't know again, we have got, and we are going to work on getting a Royals farm system expert in to know what they got back out of some of the guys last year. I know we were looking at like potential bullpen pieces. Eventually that were sort of trajectories there. Like I do want to see that, but they've got some assets, and this is a big month for them. The biggest month they'll have all year. Like this is the most interesting the Royals will be for the rest of the year for sure, I think, is right now. And Bobby Witt Jr. has given us, he's given us another reason to watch. I'm so happy for that because he is an appointment TV baseball player. There aren't very many of those. I do think Bobby Witt Jr. is one of those. And just hope that Scott Barlow can catch lightning in a bottle here, have, 3-4 really nice, solid appearances in a row. And if that happens, there will be a team that wants him and maybe even overpays for him. And that's the best thing that could happen to the Royals.
For sure. It's also been a little bit of a breath of fresh air to see Nick Pratto over the last few days. He had a really good weekend. I think he had a couple homers over the weekend series. The Royals didn't win a lot over the weekend, but that was a nice offensive piece for a team that is looking for other production outside of Bobby Witt Jr. So that was good to see as well.
We talk about Barlow and how he struggled a little bit. He's only allowed runs 2 times. He's allowed, a run in 2 of his last 7 appearances. Not a great percentage, but he's been still pretty good, right? He's still, not giving up runners or anything like that. He gives up hits and stuff. I don't think his whip, that's the thing. Again, he's not going to come in and like have zeros across the board innings, but really the only 0 that matters for what he can bring to a team is the runs allowed, not even earned runs, just runs, period. Like, can he get you out of a jam and can he get you through an inning when you've got to shut down the other team? I think he can do both of those things. 869-1240 is the number to call. Speaking of the Royals, right? We have the Royals here, of course, on KFH. You'll hear coverage beginning tonight at 6:30 as they take on the Twins. We'll come back, Tommy and I, as we make our way through this Wednesday, the day after Independence Day. Happy to be with you here. We'll be right back. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on a Wednesday. Tommy, A&M got another 5-star top blue chipper. Rinse, wash, repeat is their 2024 class. Comes in inside the top 10 at the moment. Their 23 class is good. They've had some top 5 classes, but man, they cannot ever translate it to wins. As we look across the SEC, I see them always in the mix, but never in the mix in reality. I wonder where they land in all of this, because now as Texas and Oklahoma move into the SEC, who both have top 5 classes in 23, I wonder how much that's going to hurt the Aggies. I feel like it's going to hurt the Aggies more than anybody else to have them come in, because, they've always had that pitch and that appeal to recruits like, oh, well, we're in the SEC. In their own backyard, they don't really have that now. They're back to sort of competing with Texas and Oklahoma in that regard.
Yeah, it's kind of been interesting to look at the tenure of Jimbo Fisher with the Aggies and how he compares to the tenure of Kevin Sumlin, where really Kevin Sumlin
kind of similar
has had a more successful, I would say a slightly more successful tenure than Jimbo Fisher, and the Aggies ran Sumlin out of town. So Jimbo Fisher seems to have a little bit of a longer leash there with Texas A&M, but it's going to be a challenge, I think, for them with Texas and Oklahoma moving into the SEC in 2024. The other recruiting note, I know this isn't football, but in basketball, I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Joe Toussaint, the West Virginia transfer who was considering Kansas State, picked Texas Tech. So he's joining Grant McCaslin's staff and going to Lubbock. That was a big target, I think, for Jerome Tang and the Wildcats, and Toussaint will go from West Virginia to Texas Tech.
Yeah, that's good for them, and it makes some sense for that move. Toussaint probably, and I'm going to look here real quick to see what Texas Tech has done in the portal, but it's interesting to think about them and how quickly, because they've been victims of the portal a lot too over the years. They've got, let's see, they've got Toussaint comes in. 24/7 Sports has him as a 3-star portal guy. They got another one from Arizona State. They've actually apparently gotten 2 from Arizona State. Warren Washington is a 4-star guy. They lost Jalen Tyson. They lost Daniel Bacho. I didn't see that one. So they've lost a lot and they've gained a lot. So it's going to be just like everybody else. Like, I'm looking at their list and it's crazy. So many going out, so many coming in. I don't know what it means. As you look at, the rankings list on transfers, like, it's a hard thing to get a grasp of, but Toussaint will stabilize that. 24/7 in a transfer portal ranking list has them 30th. So it's all pretty fascinating. I think, though, Tommy, even harder maybe than just regular old recruiting is trying to rank transfers. Like that's a pretty tough thing to do. Like Wichita State's
Yeah.
ranked 81st, by the way.
Right.
But
I
which is
think
slightly ahead of like Auburn, Iowa, and Kentucky. So
Right.
it's like, what does that mean? I don't know. Like it's a tough one. Kansas
major
is ranked
crapshoot.
first, by the way.
It's a crapshoot because you've got players that have had experience in other programs, and now you're not only ranking them, I would think, based on their skills and attributes and all of that, but you're also probably ranking the programs based on how people subjectively think that these transfers will play together and mesh well with the existing roster.
Right.
That's a really, really tough assessment to make. I don't know. I mean, outside of, if Kansas lands Hunter Dickinson, then that's going to vault you to the very top of the rankings. But beyond that, it makes it really, really hard to assess until the season actually begins how the transfer class will do.
Well, K-State brought in 2 big-time transfers in Kaluma
Yeah.
and Perry, and they're all the way down at 47th. We know Wichita State, what did I say, 80-something? But they're, I
81st,
think,
yeah.
like we're generally happy with the class that they've brought in. It's just a hard thing. Like I have no idea how to look at this. West Virginia, by the way, even with losing Toussaint, and we've known this, they're at 2 right now. They're going to be a really interesting team next year. They would have been far, like if the Huggins drama wasn't happening, West Virginia, I think, would have been a trendy pick to finish like 2nd in the Big 12 next year. But we'll have to see it. It's a fascinating world. There's still, I think, just a handful of names. Toussaint was one of the big ones left. Yeah, good point. Good call. That happened yesterday. He is not going to K-State, but he'll go to Texas Tech. 869-1240. That's the IOP hotline. Tommy and I will be back. We'll wrap up this Wednesday right after this.
If you're hiring, it can feel like you're trying to find a needle in a haystack.
All right, everybody, that's it for us. Hope you can make it through the day. Jim Rome at 11 will help you do it. Bob and Jeff at 2. Maggie and Perloff from 4 to 5. Zach Geld for an hour and a half, and then the Royals take over at 6:30. See if Bobby Witt Jr. can continue to stay hot. Scott Barlow can increase that trade value as we make our way through and toward that trade deadline. Coming up tomorrow, Chelsea Messenger, Tim Fitzgerald, get us caught up in betting in the K-State world. So looking forward to that. You can go back and listen to our interview with Kevin Saul today on the Odyssey app for free. For Tommy Castor and Chad Chambers, I'm Jacob Albrock. See you Thursday.